Good afternoon to you. Nice to have you here in the building. Nice to welcome those of you who are joining us online as well, wherever you are this afternoon. Glad to be able to share our time with you. It's a cold day outside, but it's good and warm inside. Lovely to see you all here. We have the lights on now. It's Christmas. We're into that season, and it's always good when we get into that season because it's kind of cold and dark outside, and often we begin to feel just a little bit like that ourselves, that it's a little bit dark. I don't know about you. I, as a child, was always really frightened of the dark. Hands up if you were kind of frightened of the dark. Yeah. We lived in a house that had a kind of ground floor, and then it had a second floor where pretty much everyone had their beds to sleep, and then there was an attic. And for reasons best known to themselves, my parents put me up in the attic through a tiny little spiral staircase that you entered through a door, and it was dark going up, and I had a small room right up at the top of the house, and it had a kind of window. The windows didn't open, but they had a kind of ventilator thing. I was terrified silly. I persuaded myself in the dark that the burglars, they were planning to come in through my bedroom window. And I was terrified always going to bed because I thought that's what's going to happen. The burglar's going to come in, and in hindsight, you're going to think the guy's daft. I mean, what self-respecting burglar is going to kind of climb up 3 levels of a house and climb across the roof and clamber through a window that doesn't even open and find a way in that way? There are easier ways to get to the house. But as a child, I was really frightened. And I used to run up the stairs and just bury myself underneath the blankets. And my sole comfort was a kind of orange-colored soft toy elephant that was called Jumbo. And I used to cling onto this Jumbo for my life's worth, right down to the bottom of the bed. This was days before they had duvets and things like that. This was just blankets over you and things such like that. And I was buried down at the bottom of the bed. I was frightened silly. And the reason was I just could not see what was going on. I mean, it was just pitch black up there. And when it's pitch black, you just imagine things that aren't there, and you can end up scared out your wits. And I guess going through our lives, a lot of folk are like that as well, that we are a little bit in the dark about a lot of things. And it's not a comfortable place to be. In the dark in terms of not really having a clue what our lives are about, where our lives are headed, what the future's going to hold. In the dark as to what on earth is going on in the world. Is there a huge, big worldwide conspiracy that is out really to destroy the planet, out to destroy all the people of the planet, and who's running this? And we're in the dark a lot of the time, reliant upon other people for snippets of information. And so we can be quite in the dark that way. We can be in the dark in terms of our emotional experience, just going through a really hard time when it just feels really dark and we can't see light at the end of that particular tunnel. Not a comfortable place to be at all. And so today, what we're going to read is just a few verses from John's account of the life and ministry of Jesus, where it is the concern on the part of the people. They come out with this great one-liner: we would like to see Jesus. And running through the Christmas story, of course, there is very much that theme. It's the theme of people who have heard about Jesus, but they don't want just to hear about him. They want actually to meet him. They want to encounter him. They want to experience him. They want to be able to see him. They don't want to be in the dark about life anymore. They actually want to see, and they want to see Jesus. So we're going to read in from John. We'll put the words on the screen for you. John chapter 12, and just a few verses from verse 20 there, where we read this. There were some Greeks among those who went up to worship at the festival. I'll read the whole thing and then come back to that. They came to Philip. He was one of the disciples who was from Bethsaida in Galilee with a request. Sir, they said, we would like to see Jesus. Philip went to tell Andrew. Andrew and Philip in turn told Jesus. There you have just a tiny little cameo of really quite an important moment. And it encapsulates really a lot of things that are important for all of us. We're told who they were. First of all, they were Greeks. That's to say they were people who didn't do church. You know, they weren't particularly religious people. They just kind of were average punters, just wanted to get on with life, make something of life. But they weren't really into religion. They didn't do church. They were Greeks. They were outsiders who kind of observed what went on amongst the Jewish people in the land of Israel, and sometimes were kind of fascinated by it. And it was at the time of the festival. We're told one of the three big Jewish festivals where there's a whole crowd of people gathered together in Jerusalem. And if you were a Greek, if you were kind of outside, if you didn't do church, you were aware that it was kind of festival time. People were all kind of hyped up about what was going on, in much the same way as at this time, people get kind of really hyped about Christmas. But if you ask them, what's it all about? They don't really have a clue. They're just aware that for a lot of people, it's pretty important and it gets them really excited. And they really want to discover what lies at the heart of this festival. And so they come out with this great one-liner, we would like to see Jesus. And that's what I want us to think about today. We would like to see Jesus. I guess that's what you would like as well. You'd like to meet him, to encounter him, to know him experientially in your life as you go about your day-by-day living, facing the particular problems that you have, coping with the particular struggles that there are, and addressing all the uncertainties that there are in your situation. I guess you resonate with that and say, yeah, you know, count me in. I'd like to see him as well. I'd like to meet him. I'd like to know him. I'd like to engage with him. I don't want just to stick at the level of knowing about him. Why did they ask that? Why did they make that request? I think there are two reasons that we are given to see why they made that request. The first is because of what he had already done. In the previous chapter of John's account of the life and ministry of Jesus, he has told us about the astonishing way in which this Jesus, who had a track record of kind of changing people's lives, had come to the home of Mary and Martha, and their brother Lazarus had been ill, he had died, and he was buried, and Jesus had stood outside the tomb and had called this man who was dead and buried, called him out of the tomb. Now, I kind of want to meet a guy like that. I want to meet someone. I want to see this Jesus. I want to know what he's like. I want to be able to know him for myself. I don't want just to hear about that. I want to meet him, encounter him, and know life lived with him like that. So in part, it's because of what he has done, and it's in part because of what people are saying about him. The first part of John chapter 12 sees the account of the entry by Jesus into Jerusalem, and the people of Jerusalem crowd out onto the streets, and they are hailing him as their king, as their leader, as the one who is going to sort out all their problems in life. And if you're a Greek, you kind of watch all that's going on and you think, what is this all about? Who is this king? Who is this one? Because back then, same as it is now, we could do with people who know how to manage and govern a country. We could do with people who are able to provide a good, clear lead to us. And so they're kind of listening into what people are saying about this Jesus and aware of something of what he has done himself. And they're thinking, I don't want just to hear about him. I want to meet him and to know him. And running through the Christmas narrative, of course, you have exactly that same theme. The shepherds out in the fields, they're told by the angels about Jesus. They want to stop at that. They run off because they want to see him. The wise men far away in the east, they hear about this star. They see the star in the sky. They know what the Bible has said, and they put two and two together, and they conclude the king that has been prophesied, the king has been born. They don't want just to stick with that knowledge, that head knowledge. They want to meet him. And so they will go to Jerusalem in order to see this king for themselves. And so that's kind of the why question. The more pressing practical one is, so how do you get to meet him and know him like that? How do you get to see Jesus? And there's just a very simple ABC that runs through the whole Bible. I think it's in some measure evident here in the passage that we have, those 3 verses there. A is simply, you do what the Greeks do. They asked, said, yeah, we would like to see Jesus. They came out with it. They told Philip, probably because Philip, it would seem from his name, had a little bit of a Greek background himself. Maybe there was some parentage, some connection with his parents that meant that it was a Greek connection. Philip is a Greek name, and maybe they just figured, yeah, he's kind of one of us. He'll understand. So they ask, Jesus, could you give me an introduction? And Philip and Andrew, they then go to Jesus and they tell him. And that really is the starting point. You just say, Jesus, I would like to know you. Not complicated. You start from the premise that you ask him. A very good friend of mine for the last 40 plus years, wonderfully converted. He was an alcoholic. He was an addict and in a total mess. And in hospital, the doctors hadn't been able to help him. AA hadn't been able to help him. None of the clinics had been able to help him. He was there, stuck in hospital. He was a total mess, total write-off. And in the hospital, someone said, have you tried asking Jesus? And he kind of figured, I don't even know who Jesus is. But he asked him. He said, Jesus, I don't know who you are. I don't know even if you are. But if you are there, and if you are what people crack you up to be, then you've got to help me because no one else can. And overnight, he came off that addiction without any withdrawal symptoms and has never touched a drop since. He just asked to Jesus that he didn't really know much about. He just said, Jesus, if you're for real, I want to know you, and you've got to help me, please. So he asked. And that's what these Greeks do. They simply ask. And if that's you, either here in the building or online, you ask, first of all. Second thing is you believe. That's to say you trust him, and you've got good grounds to trust him because of his track record, the things that we are told about and things that we do know about him. He is absolutely trustworthy. A lot of people down through the centuries have found that he's totally trustworthy as well. And so you trust him that he will do the needful. And that's Jesus himself said, if you believe in me, chapter 11 of John, verse 40, if you believe in me, you will see my glory. So he says, keep trusting me. Keep trusting me. Stick with me. Whatever the situation may be, however bleak it may look, however difficult it may look, however incapable of any sort of resolution it may feel to you to be, keep trusting me. He says, I'm in this with you, and if you keep trusting me like that, you will see me more and more clearly. You see my glory. That's the B, and the C is simply you come to him. You do what the shepherds did. You get off the hills and you actually go to where he is. You do what the wise men do. You get out of your academy and you come to where he is. And for a lot of people, the simple solution to that is you simply come to the worship of God's people on a Sunday, wherever that may be, because he's there. And as you come, then you encounter him. Sometimes in the most unlikely and craziest of ways. But that's how it happens. ABC, you ask, you believe, and you come. And you have the assurance of Scripture that as you do that, you will get to know this Jesus better. You will get to not just know about him, you will get to know him. You will get to experience him. You'll get to encounter him. You'll get to see him more and more clearly. And that's the wonder of it. By the eye of faith, we are able to see one who is invisible, but see him more clearly than I'm seeing any of you. We see him clearly for who he is, for what he does, and we're glad to follow him and share our lives with him. Let me pray. Lord, some of us are pretty much in the dark. Some have been passing through pretty rough times, difficult times, and struggling to be able to make much sense of it, struggling to be able to see you at work in the middle of it. I want to ask for all who are in that place that you would lead them safely through this dark spell in their lives and bring them to a better place. Would you open their eyes, and would you help them to see that you're there, to see that you're wise, to see what you're doing, to see where you're leading, and to see that you will be with them, come what may. And some, Lord, just a great, great dark cloud has hung over them for long enough, and it's left them cast down and depressed, and they just find it a struggle to get out of that pit of depression and despair. And I ask for them that you would lift them up out of that darkness, opening their eyes to see the light of your own presence, the light of your own goodness and grace. Would you do them good? And would you help each of us? Because that's the longing in all of our hearts. It is, we would like to see you more and more clearly. And we'd like to learn to follow you more and more nearly. And we'd like to learn to love you more and more dearly. Would you help us, Lord? We're asking and praying, please, that you would do that and lead us forward from here. And we'll gladly give you the praise and the glory for it. And it's in your own name that we ask. Amen. Good. Well, enjoy the rest of your lunch. We move through the month of December, through the season of Advent, and it gets kind of more and more Christmassy as we go along. Good.